Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I moved into my grandma's old house about 8 months after she passed. The place had been sitting empty for a while, and I guess part of me felt like I owed it to her to keep it in the family. It was one of those older 2-story homes with pale yellow siding that always looked slightly sun-faded, no matter how clean it was. The kind of place with creaky stairs, doorknobs that rattle even when they're locked, and a strange smell that no amount of open windows ever really gets rid of. I was working full-time at a small vet clinic on the edge of town, so I wasn't around during the day. But the house had this slow, lived-in charm that made it feel safe, at least in the beginning. It started with little things, you know? Things you don't even realize are happening until they stack up. I'd come home and the light in the upstairs hallway would be on. I figured maybe I'd just forgotten to turn it off in the morning. But then it was the bathroom mirror, fogged up like someone had taken a hot shower while I was at work. I remember standing there staring at it, holding my breath, just trying to come up with some normal explanation. Maybe a pipe leaked steam. Maybe the heater kicked on weird. It didn't make sense, but I didn't want to jump to anything crazy. That's how it always starts. You talk yourself out of what's right in front of you. One night I noticed the cereal in the pantry was in a different spot. Not just moved, but like organized in a way I don't do. Boxes pushed to the back, labels perfectly facing forward. I live alone, so unless I sleepwalk with OCD tendencies, that wasn't me. I even checked the locks on all the doors and windows that night. Front, back, side. Even the one in the laundry room that barely closes all the way. They were shut tight. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Stress. Too many late nights. Too many crime shows. But there's a difference between misplacing your keys and your house feeling like it's been managed. What finally tipped me over was something my neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, said. She's retired, probably in her 70s, and she spends most of her day tending her flowers and drinking sweet tea on the porch. One Saturday morning, she waved me over and said, "You had company yesterday? Thought you were working." I told her no, and she squinted at me, real serious, and said, "Well, someone was up in that front bedroom window around 2 in the afternoon, just standing there." My stomach sank. I don't use that room. It used to be my grandma's sewing room, and now it's mostly empty except for old furniture and boxes. I nodded and said I'd check it out. But I already knew. I wasn't alone in that house. I waited until late afternoon to go upstairs. Something about daylight made it feel a little less unnerving, like the sun might chase away whatever was wrong. I walked slowly, deliberately, with that sort of tightness in your chest that you get before opening a door you're not sure you want to open. The front bedroom was just as I'd left it, quiet, stuffy, untouched. But then I noticed something subtle. The lace curtain had been moved, pulled back just enough to peek through. I never touch that curtain. It always just hangs there, like it did when Grandma lived here. I stepped closer and felt the edge of the fabric. It was warm, warmer than it should have been. That's when I noticed the faintest shoe print on the dusty wood floor, heading toward the hallway. I followed it to the end of the hall where the attic door was. It's one of those pull-down ladders built into the ceiling. I don't use it, never had a reason to. The string that hangs down from the trap door had always been just out of reach, and I never bothered to grab a chair. But that day, it was swaying slightly, like someone had given it a gentle tug and let go. I stared at it for a while. I didn't want to pull it. Every instinct I had told me to leave it alone. But eventually I grabbed a stool from the kitchen, stood under the attic, and gave the cord a slow, reluctant pull. The ladder creaked down, groaning like it hadn't been moved in years. Dust rained down in soft clouds, and something in me felt like it was bracing. I climbed up one rung at a time. The air changed as I got higher, mustier, more still. My head breached the opening, and for a moment I couldn't see anything. Then my eyes adjusted. There was a sleeping bag in the far corner tucked behind a stack of plastic bins, an old lantern, a used coffee cup, and next to it, a crumpled newspaper from 2 weeks ago. There was even a plastic grocery bag filled with snacks, things I knew were missing from my pantry, like those granola bars I thought I'd run out of. That's when I noticed the notebook. It was small, spiral-bound, and the top page had my name written in messy, slanted handwriting. Just my name, nothing else. I didn't go any farther in. I backed down the ladder like I was on autopilot, not even realizing I'd held my breath until my feet hit the floor. I slammed the attic shut and pushed the stool away with a noise that echoed through the whole house. I stood there, frozen in my hallway, listening. Nothing. No creaks, no footsteps. Just my own heart beating so loud it felt like it was in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called the police, not because I thought they'd catch anyone up there, but because I needed someone else to see it. Someone in uniform who'd confirm I wasn't losing my mind. The officers showed up about 20 minutes later. Two of them, Officer Talbot and a younger guy named Reed. I led them upstairs, hands still shaking a little, and pulled the attic cord again. The ladder came down with the same heavy groan. Talbot went up first while Reed stayed beside me, quietly taking notes. I watched Talbot disappear into the dark, and there was this stretch of silence that felt way too long. Then he called down, "Yeah, someone's been up here, recently." When he came back down, he was holding the notebook. He flipped it open for me and showed a page I hadn't seen. A sketch of me, standing at the kitchen sink, washing dishes. It wasn't great, but it was detailed enough to make my stomach turn. They didn't find anyone in the attic. Whoever had been living there was already gone. No fingerprints, no ID, nothing that pointed to a name. Just evidence that they'd been watching me, maybe for weeks. Officer Talbot said it was probably a drifter, someone who knew the house had been empty for a while and took advantage of it still looking that way. "You'd be surprised how often this kind of thing happens," he said, like he was talking about a flat tire. "They suggested I get new locks, install motion lights, maybe even cameras." I nodded, but all I could think about was how easily someone had been sharing my space without me knowing. Eating my food, walking my halls, drawing me. I stayed with a friend for the next few days while a locksmith came out and changed everything. Doors, windows, even the little lock on the attic hatch. I bought cameras for every room, even though the idea of seeing something after the fact terrified me. I don't know when the person left or how long they'd been watching me before Mrs. Delaney said something. All I know is that it stopped, just like that. No more lights left on, no more cereal moved, no fog on the mirrors. It was like they vanished into the walls and took all the noise with them. But I still sleep with the TV on now. I can't stand the quiet. I kept the notebook. I don't know why. Maybe because throwing it away felt like pretending it never happened. Every now and then when I open the kitchen drawer where I keep it, I still get that same chill I felt when I first saw my name written inside. Just those 4 letters, alone on the page. Like I'd been labeled, marked. It's been almost a year, and I've told maybe 3 people this whole story. But I still find myself staring at the attic door sometimes, waiting for that pull string to sway. I was living in a rented duplex just outside of Dayton, Ohio, during the late spring of 2019. It wasn't a bad area, but it had that weird mix of silence and unpredictability you only really get in these in-between neighborhoods. Not fully city, not fully suburban either. I'd just moved in about a month before after getting a contract job at a small logistics company nearby. It was one of those 2-story duplexes with a narrow front yard and a short chain-link fence that barely looked like it could keep a determined squirrel out. My neighbor in the other unit was rarely around, working long shifts and staying with her boyfriend most nights, which meant I usually had the whole place to myself. That Saturday was quiet. I remember because I'd just finished my second cup of coffee and was in that half-productive, half-lazy weekend mode where I was alternating between laundry and watching a rerun of some cooking show I didn't even like. I had one of the windows cracked open in the living room, just enough to let in the breeze, and that's when I first noticed him. Across the street, this man was walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of the empty lot. Not like he was exercising or waiting for a ride, more like he couldn't make up his mind about something. He kept glancing up at my place, turning sharply, pacing again. He was tall, wearing a baggy denim jacket and holding something I couldn't make out from that distance. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured he was maybe looking for someone or waiting for a friend. But when I stepped outside to shake out a rug, he stopped dead in his tracks and just stared at me. No nod, no hey, no facial expression at all, just full eye contact like I'd interrupted him in the middle of a conversation I wasn't invited to. I muttered a quiet morning and went back inside, trying to brush it off. But less than 2 minutes later, there was a knock at my front door. Not a loud one, more like a hesitant tap-tap, pause-tap, like he was still deciding if he should even be there. When I opened the door, he stood on the bottom step looking up at me like he was trying to remember a script. His voice was calm but oddly distant. Hey, did a woman named Janine ever live here? Or maybe Jennifer? He blinked slowly, like he wasn't even sure why he was asking. I told him I'd only been there a short while, that I didn't know the previous tenants. He nodded, looked past me into the house like he was trying to see something specific, then muttered, "Right, okay," and turned around. No thank you, no goodbye. He just walked away, not across the street, but around the corner of the duplex, where the side door led into the laundry room. I didn't like how he lingered around the side of the house, so I waited by the front window, pretending to check my phone while peeking through the blinds. After a minute or two, he was gone. Just disappeared down the street, I assumed. I tried to shake it off, but something about the way he asked that question stuck with me. Not just the vagueness of it, but the way he said those names like he was casting a net, hoping one would catch. I locked the front door, double-checked the deadbolt, and even wedged the chair under the knob like my dad used to do when we stayed at cheap motels. Then I went back to folding laundry, though I kept the volume low, listening for footsteps without realizing I was doing it. About 20 minutes passed, maybe a little more. I was in the kitchen rinsing out a pan when I heard the dull, metallic sound of something scraping against metal. It wasn't loud, just that hollow clink of metal being forced where it didn't belong. At first I thought maybe it was a neighbor messing with their car, but when I moved toward the back of the house, I caught a glimpse through the side window by the laundry room. He was back, and this time, he wasn't pacing. He was crouched near the side door, shoulders tense, using a tire iron to wedge it against the door frame like he knew exactly where the weak point was. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was disbelief. I remember standing there for a few seconds, frozen, watching him shift his weight and pull at the door, like this was just some part of his day. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't looking over his shoulder. He looked like a guy who'd done this before. I didn't yell. I didn't bang on the window. I backed away as quietly as I could, grabbed my phone from the living room, and locked myself in the downstairs bathroom. It was the only room in the house without a window, and the only door with a sliding bolt on the inside. I sat down on the floor, barely breathing, and dialed 911 with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. The operator picked up fast, and I gave her my address and whispered what was happening. She asked me to stay on the line and describe everything I heard. That's when the sound of wood splintering echoed through the hallway. Loud, violent, final. The tire iron must have popped the door because I heard the door frame give. Then nothing. No footsteps, no words. Just silence, so thick it felt like the house was holding its breath. I stayed completely still, the phone pressed against my cheek, heart pounding so hard I swore the mic would pick it up. The operator kept talking calmly, asking me if I was safe, if I could hear anything. I said no, and for about 30 seconds that was true, until I heard the sound of someone slowly walking across the kitchen floor. Whoever it was moved with purpose, but not in a rush. I could hear the heel of each step hitting the tile, one at a time, deliberate. Then a pause, then another step. I imagined him standing in the hallway just outside the bathroom, maybe listening for movement. maybe trying to figure out if someone was home after all. I covered the bottom of the phone with my hand and tried to keep my breathing silent. Every part of me felt like it was vibrating. The doorknob didn't move, no rattling, no testing, but I heard the faintest sound of fingers brushing against the door, like he was feeling along the edge, and then it stopped. No door opened, no footsteps retreated. Just that same horrible stillness. It stayed like that for at least 5 minutes. The 911 operator told me the cops were close and that I should stay put until I heard them identify themselves. I didn't move. I just stared at the base of the door, waiting for a shadow to appear or for the wood to splinter like it had at the laundry entrance. Instead, I heard a voice, not from inside the house, but faint outside. "Police, if anyone's inside, call out," I shouted back before I even thought it through, unlocking the bolt with shaking hands and swinging the door open like a prisoner escaping a cell. 2 officers met me at the front of the duplex. They'd found the side door hanging open, but no one inside. No signs of forced entry beyond the pried door. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. The cops did a sweep, asked me to describe the guy, and when I told them about the denim jacket and tire iron, one of them asked if I'd gotten a look at his face. I had, and I told them. Pale skin, chapped lips, shaved head, deep dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. The officer exchanged a glance with the other and just nodded slightly. "We've had some calls about a guy matching that description," he said, "but this is the first time he's actually broken in." They took my statement, told me to call if I saw him again, and left. I spent the rest of the night sleeping on the couch with the lights on, a kitchen knife under the blanket, jumping at every creak. I had a friend come stay with me for a few days after that, but the guy never came back. I replaced the side door lock, added motion lights, and moved out 3 months later. To this day, I still wonder what he was actually looking for. Janine, Jennifer, whoever they were, if they even existed. But what messes me up the most is how calm he was. Like walking into someone's house with a tire iron was no big deal. Like maybe he really believed he had the right to be there. I'd been working from home for about 7 months when this happened. This was last fall, mid-October, right around when the days started getting dark a little too early and the apartment started feeling quieter than usual. I lived alone in a 3rd-floor unit just outside of Phoenix, in one of those big beige apartment complexes where every building looks the same, and you can hear your neighbors sneeze through the vents. My days were pretty uneventful. Zoom calls, coffee on the balcony, occasional laundry. I didn't have a pet or roommates, just me and my laptop, and honestly, that was how I liked it. I kept to myself, paid rent on time, and barely ever saw the property staff unless something broke, which was rare. That day had been boring in the best way. I just finished a call around 1:30 p.m. and was reheating some leftover pasta when someone knocked. Not rang, knocked. 3 sharp, slow knocks. I froze for a second because I wasn't expecting anyone, and nobody ever came by without texting first. I peeked through the peephole. It was a man, probably late 30s or early 40s, wearing a navy polo and holding a clipboard. He had a short beard, sunglasses pushed up on his head, and a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. There was a patch on his shirt, but I couldn't read it through the peephole. He noticed the movement. Maybe he saw the shadow, and raised his voice just enough to be heard through the door. "Hi there, I'm with maintenance. We're checking all water heaters in the building. There was a leak in one of the lower units." His tone was casual, like someone repeating the same line for the 10th time that day. He gestured toward the clipboard. "Should only take a minute." I didn't open the door. Instead, I asked, not rudely, "Do you have any ID from the leasing office?" That's when his whole vibe shifted. The man paused, then frowned. "Ma'am, I said I'm with maintenance. It's just a water heater check." I stood completely still, trying to process the weird pressure in his voice. He wasn't yelling, but there was this subtle edge, like I was the one being difficult. "Just open the door so I can get this done," he added. sharper now. That's when my gut kicked in. I told him through the door that I wasn't comfortable letting anyone in without verifying with the front office. He stared at the door for a second, then muttered something under his breath and walked off. Not fast, not slow. Just left. I waited a good 5 minutes before even stepping away from the peephole. After he walked off, I locked the deadbolt, then dragged the bar lock into place too, even though I'd never used it before. My hands were shaking a little, not out of fear exactly, more like adrenaline, like my body knew something was wrong before my brain could name it. I called the leasing office right away. No one picked up. It was during their lunch hour, I think. So I left a message explaining what happened and asked if they had anyone doing maintenance checks that day. I also emailed them, just to have it in writing. For the rest of the afternoon, I kept peeking out the blinds, checking the parking lot, jumping a little whenever someone walked past the hallway window. Around 4 p.m., the property manager finally called me back. Her name's Lisa. Super no-nonsense. Always sounds like she's halfway through solving 10 other problems when she talks to you. I explained everything again. She got quiet for a second, then asked me to describe the guy. Height, shirt, clipboard, everything. When I finished, she sighed and said, "We don't have any maintenance requests in your building today, and none of our team match that description." My stomach dropped. She asked if I'd mind coming down to the office the next morning to look at some security footage. Of course, I said yes. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt louder. I left the hallway light on, double-checked the locks 3 times, and even pulled the dresser a few inches in front of the door like I used to do when I lived alone in college. It felt excessive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever that guy was, he hadn't just picked my unit by chance. The way he insisted, the way he didn't even try to leave a notice or say he'd come back, it was too pointed. I couldn't stop imagining what might have happened if I'd opened that door. That thought looped in my head all night. The next morning, I walked to the leasing office just after they opened. Lisa was already there with one of the maintenance guys, a short man named Kenny, who I'd seen before fixing a dryer unit 2 floors down. She didn't say much, just motioned me over to her desk where she had the security monitor up. "You're not the only one," she said. Then she played the footage. And there he was, same man, same shirt, same damn clipboard, walking up to a different unit across the courtyard. A woman lived there too. He knocked, stood there, waited, then walked away. Same pattern. Lisa scrubbed through the footage and showed me he did it 3 more times, all to apartments rented by women who lived alone. Lisa told me they'd already reported it to the police earlier that morning after another tenant emailed in about the same thing. Apparently, one of the other women had opened her door just a crack before getting a weird feeling and shutting it again. He hadn't forced anything, no break-ins, no property damage, just a string of attempts, enough to spook people, but not enough to catch him in the act. That's what made it worse, honestly. He was smart, calculated, no costume, no fake badge, just enough confidence to make you doubt your instincts for a second. Lisa printed stills of his face from the footage and said they'd be putting out a notice to the entire complex. He knew what he was doing, she said, tapping the image. Always the women who live alone, always during work hours. I walked back to my apartment trying to calm myself down, but everything looked different now. Every knock, every noise in the hallway. It all felt loaded. I started looking at people's faces in the parking lot, wondering who lived where, who saw what. That week, I bought a new chain lock, a doorbell camera, and one of those heavy-duty wedges for under the door. I even started working from a cafe a few days a week, just to not be alone so much. It's wild how fast something like this reprograms you. You go from feeling safe to constantly scanning for danger without even realizing it. About 3 weeks later, we got an email from the leasing office saying police were still looking for the man, and that they believed he'd tried the same scam at 2 other complexes nearby. The email didn't say much else, just reminded everyone not to open the door unless they confirmed the visitor with the front office. I saved the photos of the guy on my phone, just in case. No one ever came forward saying they knew him. He vanished, like someone who knew the limits of what he could get away with and stayed just inside them. That still bothers me. I think about it way more than I want to admit. How close it came. How that knock could have led to something way worse. There was no forced entry, no real confrontation, but it stuck with me in a way I didn't expect. I've lived alone for most of my adult life and always felt confident about it. That day cracked something. Maybe that's why I'm writing this. Not for sympathy, just as a reminder. Trust that first instinct. Even if someone's wearing the right clothes, saying the right words, holding a clipboard like they belong there. If something feels even slightly out of step, you don't owe them anything. Lock the door, ask the questions, be a little rude. It might save your life. I live in a quiet neighborhood in the outskirts of Spokane, Washington, in one of those small, older ranch-style homes, with the laundry room attached to the back of the garage. This happened last October, a few weeks before Halloween. At the time, I was working remotely for a logistics company, and most of my days were spent answering emails in sweatpants and brewing way too much coffee. I've lived alone for the past 3 years. My husband and I split up and he moved to Arizona. It's not a big house, but it's mine. That night I had just made dinner and was watching a documentary on the couch when the power cut out without any warning. Not a flicker or a surge, just total black. At first I thought it was just my house. I stood there for a moment in the dark, waiting for that usual hum of the refrigerator or the click of the thermostat, but it stayed dead quiet. I looked out my front window and saw the street dark too. Porch lights, windows, traffic signals. Nothing. Just this weird stillness, like the whole block had taken a deep breath and forgotten to exhale. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table and saw I still had battery, but no signal. I tried the flashlight, but it was dim. I kept an actual flashlight in the hallway drawer just in case, so I grabbed that and made my way to the laundry room to check the breakers. I don't love going out there at night. It's not exactly insulated well, and spiders seem to treat it like a seasonal rental. But I pushed open the creaky door and swept the flashlight across the old breaker panel. Everything was exactly how it should be. No tripped switches, no signs of damage. I stood there for a second, the beam of light catching on an empty laundry basket and the dusty washer lid, when I noticed something strange out the corner of my eye. Through the little glass panel in the back door, I could see a dim light, like a soft pulse, glowing in the backyard. My heart kind of stalled for a second because everything else was dark. Every single house in the neighborhood was out, except that motion light by my garage. It's one of those battery backup motion lights. I had it installed after someone tried to siphon gas from my car last year. It doesn't run on the main grid. It only lights up if something moves in the yard. And it was on. Not flickering, not glitching. On. I turned off my flashlight and stepped toward the back window slowly without making noise. It was that kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears. I moved the curtain just enough to peek through. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing completely still beside the garage just outside the edge of the light facing the house. He wasn't moving, not pacing, not creeping, just standing there, like he was waiting for something. He looked average, like someone you'd pass at a gas station and not remember. Medium height, dark hoodie pulled over his head, hands at his sides. But the way he was angled toward the house made my stomach knot up. I crouched down, staying low beneath the window, and didn't move for a solid minute. I remember thinking maybe it was someone from the utility company, but it didn't make sense. No van, no gear. And why would he be standing out there in the dark near my garage if the whole block had lost power? I crawled away from the window and just sat on the floor in the hallway with the flashlight off, trying to think. Calling 911 felt like the obvious answer, but my phone still had no signal. Not even one bar. I went into the bedroom and peered out the front. Still no lights anywhere, no cars, no movement. Just pitch black. I thought about making a run for my neighbor Kathy's house 2 doors down, but she was out of town visiting her sister in Oregon. That left either staying put or going outside to confront whoever was behind my garage. I chose neither. I locked every door, double-checked every window, and sat there on the floor of my hallway until my legs started to cramp. Maybe 20 minutes passed, maybe more. I don't know. But at some point, the backyard light finally shut off. I waited a few extra minutes just to be sure, then forced myself to peek out again. No one was there. The yard looked exactly how it always does. The rickety wooden fence, the overgrown rose bush, the wheelbarrow I keep forgetting to put back in the shed. But that didn't settle me. If anything, it made things worse. I started thinking, had he gone around the side of the house? Was he still out there just outside the reach of the motion light, waiting for me to step outside? I ended up dragging a heavy chair in front of the back door and sat up all night with the flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other. When the sun finally started to rise, I walked around the house slowly, checking every corner of the yard through the windows. I didn't go outside until full daylight. And when I finally did, I walked straight toward the garage with a sick feeling in my gut. That's when I saw the side panel on my external fuse box was hanging open, like someone had messed with it. There were tiny scratch marks around the edges, fresh ones, and I found a pair of wire cutters lying half buried in the mulch beside the AC unit. I didn't touch them. I went back inside and called the police as soon as my phone got signal again. They showed up about 30 minutes later. The officer who responded, his name was Officer Klein, I remember because he looked barely older than 25, took one look at the fuse box and said, "Yeah, someone knew what they were doing." According to him, cutting power to a house isn't hard if you know which wires to mess with. He said they've seen it before. People disable outside power to see if anyone comes out. If no one does, it's usually a green light to break in. The wire cutters were bagged as evidence, but they didn't have prints. No cameras caught anything either, since all my neighbors' systems had gone out with the blackout. Mine too, except for that one motion light in the backyard. The most unnerving part? Klein told me there hadn't been a planned outage or storm that night. The power company said they didn't send anyone out and had no record of any issues on our grid, which means either it was a freak accident or someone caused it. The officer stayed polite but honest, said it was probably someone looking for an easy house to break into, and that I was lucky the battery light scared them off. But I could tell from the way he kept glancing around the yard that he wasn't entirely convinced it was just a random prowler. There was a tension in the air, even after the sun had fully come up. I replaced all the locks that week and paid someone to install a reinforced back door with a deadbolt that locks from the inside with no keyhole on the outside. I even got a big dog from a local rescue shelter, a goofy black lab mix named Moose. But I'll be honest, I still don't sleep the same. I check the motion light battery twice a month now. I keep the hallway flashlight right next to me at night. And every now and then, I wake up in the early hours and just sit there staring out into the backyard, waiting to see that light flicker on again. It hasn't. Not yet. But if it ever does, I know better now than to brush it off. Because someone out there that night knew exactly where my fuse box was. They knew the layout of my house, and they knew I was alone. I'd just gotten out of the shower when I heard the knock. It was a Thursday night, mid-October, a little before midnight. I remember because I was still scrolling through an email from work, wondering if I should reply or just leave it for the morning. I live alone in a single-story house in northern Kentucky, kind of tucked away at the edge of a cul-de-sac. Not remote, just quiet. The kind of place where neighbors wave but don't really talk. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not that late, and I hadn't ordered anything. I paused with the towel still over my shoulders, listening, making sure I wasn't imagining it. The knock came again, a little louder this time, 3 short raps. I threw on some sweatpants and went to the front door, which has one of those frosted glass panels. You can make out shapes but not details. There was definitely someone out there. I didn't open it. I just called out, "Can I help you?" A man answered, said he had a food delivery for someone named Brandon. His voice wasn't aggressive, just casual, maybe too casual for the time of night. I told him he had the wrong house. He paused for a second, then asked if I could just open the door and check the receipt. That was the first moment I felt something clench inside me. I said no. Told him again, nobody named Brandon lived here, and I hadn't ordered anything. He kept standing there for a few seconds, then knocked once more, slower this time, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I stayed still. My phone was charging in the kitchen, so I couldn't see the camera feed right away. But I did glance through the peephole, and all I could make out was a guy in a gray hoodie holding a paper bag. No uniform, no logo on the bag. I said, louder this time, "You need to leave." He didn't respond. Just stood there for maybe 10 more seconds, then finally walked off. After a minute or two, I went to the window and peeked through the blinds. The street was empty. No car parked out front, no engine running. It was strange. Even if it was a real delivery, most drivers don't hang around that long when they're at the wrong address. I figured maybe it was just some weird mix-up or prank. Still, something about how he lingered bugged me. I grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter and opened the doorbell cam app. I didn't expect to see anything alarming, maybe just a guy being annoying. But when the footage loaded and I rewound to the moment of the knock, I felt my stomach twist. At first it looked normal. As normal as a random guy on your porch near midnight can look. He had that generic kind of appearance. Average build, probably mid-30s, baseball cap under the hoodie, paper bag in one hand, the other in his pocket. He kept glancing toward the door like he was rehearsing what to say. But as I let the footage play, something caught my eye near the bottom corner of the frame. Movement. I paused, then slowly rewound a few seconds and looked closer. There was a second guy. I hadn't seen him at all before. He was crouched low on the right side of my porch, just out of sight from the peephole and window. He was dressed in black, hunched down by the edge of the steps like he was trying to make himself as small as possible. The camera caught just a sliver of him shifting his weight, probably trying to stay balanced without making noise. I watched the video over and over, and every time I noticed something new. At one point, his hand moved toward his jacket like he was reaching for something. Then he froze, waiting, completely still, while the fake delivery guy kept talking. That second man never moved toward the door. He just waited, hidden. If I had opened the door, I don't know what would have happened, and honestly, I don't want to finish that thought. I felt this cold pressure settle in my chest. I sat down on the edge of the couch and just stared at the frozen frame on my phone. That guy was there the whole time, crouched beside my front steps, and I had no idea. I even spoke through the door. I was right there. My voice probably gave away exactly where I was standing. The more I thought about it, the more I started to question everything. Had they been watching the house before? Was this planned? Were they just going door to door, hoping someone gullible would open up? Or was I specifically targeted for some reason I couldn't see? I checked the rest of the footage for the night, backing up a full hour before the knock. Nothing. No signs of them casing the place, no car pulling up in view. Just that knock at 11:45, and then the fake delivery routine. After they left, the guy in black stood up and followed the first man down the driveway. They didn't say anything to each other, at least not where the mic could pick it up, and then they walked off toward the end of the street, disappearing beyond the camera's range. No car, no license plate, nothing I could give to the cops. Just two guys, one pretending to be friendly, the other hiding in the dark. I didn't sleep that night, I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that crouched figure next to my steps, listening to my voice on the other side of the door. I ended up sitting on the couch with a baseball bat across my lap and all the lights on, door locked, curtains drawn, waiting for some kind of sound outside. But nothing happened. Morning came like nothing had ever occurred. Birds chirping, garbage truck rumbling down the road. I kept replaying the footage, half wishing I'd imagined it, but it was real. I saved it to a USB and took it to the police station later that afternoon. The officer who took my statement was calm, polite. but you could tell this kind of thing wasn't uncommon anymore. He watched the footage, paused when the second man came into frame, and let out this small sigh through his nose. He said something like, "Yeah, we've been seeing more of these. Apparently, it's a tactic some people use. One knocks, creates a distraction. The other waits for an opening. Sometimes it's just theft. Other times it turns into something worse." He filed a report, told me to keep the footage backed up, and recommended I upgrade the camera angle to catch more of the yard. That was it. I ended up getting motion lights installed around the front and side of the house, along with a second camera by the driveway. I also started locking the storm door, which I'd never bothered with before. It's weird how something that lasted maybe 5 minutes can change the way you feel in your own home. For weeks, I found myself tensing up every time someone knocked, even during the day. I stopped answering the door altogether unless I was expecting someone. The worst part was that I never got a clear answer. Were they looking for a random target? Or was Brandon just a lie to get someone to open up? It's been almost a year now. Nothing else has happened. No strange visitors, no unexplained knocks, no repeat attempts. But I still think about that night. Not constantly, just every now and then. Usually when I hear a knock after dark, or when I open the app and see the front steps sitting empty in black and white. It could have gone so much worse. I was lucky. I know that. And whoever those guys were, they were patient. Too patient for it to have been a prank. If you're reading this and live alone, especially in a quiet neighborhood like mine, don't assume every knock is innocent. Check your cameras. Lock your doors. And whatever you do, don't open it just because someone says it's food. Back in late September, I was still living in this modest one-story rental in Anaheim. Not far from a busy road, but tucked into a street quiet enough that you could hear sprinklers click on at night. I'd just gotten out of a long relationship that left me drained in every sense. Emotionally, financially, even practically. There were little things around the house that kept breaking, and I was too burnt out to deal with any of them. One of the more annoying problems was the sliding glass door in the back. The lock jammed constantly, and the door would pop slightly open if you pulled it just right. I didn't have the tools or the patience to keep patching it with those plastic security bars you buy at Home Depot. So, I figured I'd finally just hire someone to come fix it properly. I went through Craigslist because, frankly, I was broke. I filtered through dozens of sketchy ads with blurry pictures of drills and flexing arms before landing on a guy named Drew, who seemed surprisingly legit. His post had detailed pricing, photos of actual jobs he'd done, and he even wrote out his license number. I messaged him and he got back to me that same night. Polite, direct, said he could stop by the next afternoon. I liked that he didn't try to upsell or ask for anything weird. We set it up for noon, and he actually showed up 5 minutes early, which kind of shocked me. Drew looked like the kind of guy you'd see working on a fence in your neighbor's yard and not think twice about. Mid-40s, tall shaved head, slight farmer's tan, and a pair of beat-up Timberlands that looked like they'd been through years of concrete dust. He had one of those utility belts that clanked with every step, and he talked just enough to explain what he was doing without going on and on. He examined the door, took it off the track, replaced a busted locking mechanism, and lubricated the frame where it had started to stick. He even pointed out some rust around the bottom seal and offered to throw in a temporary fix for free. The whole thing took maybe 45 minutes, and when he left I remember thinking, damn, maybe Craigslist isn't that sketchy after all. That evening after dinner I settled on the couch with a beer and rewatched The Thing. It's sort of a comfort movie for me, even though it's tense as hell. The new lock had that satisfying metallic click when I shut the door earlier, and it felt good knowing I didn't have to wedge a bar in it anymore like some makeshift barricade. Around 10:30 p.m., I was still in the living room, lights dimmed, just me and the TV glow. That's when I heard the sound. That unmistakable shh click of the sliding door shifting open. I paused the movie, sat up straight, and stared toward the darkened kitchen. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought maybe I imagined it. But then I noticed the faintest draft brushing past my ankle. I stood up slowly, trying not to make the stool scrape on the floor, and walked toward the kitchen. The lights were still off in there, but the moonlight coming through the window above the sink gave me just enough to see outlines. The sliding door was cracked open maybe 6 inches. The new lock, supposed to be solid, was undone. I hadn't heard glass shatter or anything forcing it open. It was like someone had known exactly how to pop it from the outside and had done it quietly. My heart started hammering in that weird, hollow way, like you're trying to listen through it. I stepped forward and closed the door carefully, then locked it again. This time I shoved a broomstick into the bottom track, just in case. I walked through the house room by room, checking the bathroom, both bedrooms, even the hallway closet. Nothing. All the other doors were locked, windows untouched. I didn't see anyone outside, and the street looked dead quiet. Still, I couldn't shake how specific it was. That door was the only one worked on today. I thought about Drew, and for the first time, something about him not talking much didn't feel like politeness. It felt like control. I opened my phone and pulled up the outside security camera I'd installed last month. It's just a basic motion-triggered cam, positioned above the back patio, mostly for raccoons and package theft. But when I scrolled to the last triggered event, my stomach dropped. At 10:27 p.m., exactly when I'd heard the sound, the camera had picked up someone on the patio. The footage was grainy and dark, but clear enough to make out the figure. Same build as Drew, same walk. But this time, he wasn't in the work clothes from earlier. He had on a dark hoodie, gloves, and jeans. No tools, no bags, just standing there, right in front of the glass door. The part that really froze me, though, was that he didn't approach the door like a burglar would. He went straight for the bottom corner, crouched, and within seconds, the door slid an inch open, right before the video cut out. He knew the exact weak spot. He knew it because he made it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with a kitchen knife and kept the outside lights on. Every sound became amplified. A car backfiring 3 blocks away made me flinch. I kept checking the footage on loop, rewinding and pausing, trying to see his face, but he never looked toward the camera. He moved like someone who'd done it before. Confident, fast, deliberate. I didn't want to call the cops until I had more proof. I started questioning myself. Was it really him? Could it have been someone else? But deep down, I already knew. There's no way some random person would have known how to quietly bypass a brand new lock on a specific door in a specific house, just hours after it was fixed. The next morning, I didn't go straight to the police. Instead, I texted Drew from a different number using a burner app and pretended to be a new client. I said I had a broken window lock and wanted help that same day. He replied within 10 minutes, friendly as ever, and asked for the address. I gave him a fake one 2 blocks over. Then I waited across the street in my car, engine off, eyes on the driveway. He pulled up in a gray Ford Ranger at 12:14 p.m. Same guy. And when he got out, I saw the same utility belt, the same clean-cut look. But there was something different about the way he scanned the house, like he was assessing more than just a job. He knocked, waited, then walked along the side like he was trying to see if anyone was really home. That was enough for me. I took screenshots from the video the night before, saved the text exchange, and filed a report at the local precinct. The officer I spoke with seemed skeptical at first until I showed him the footage. He didn't promise much, just said they'd look into it. I never got any follow-up, and I'm not even sure they took it seriously. I went a step further and reported Drew's Craigslist ad. A week later, it was gone. Whether it was taken down or just reposted under a different name, I'll never know. I replaced the entire sliding door with a reinforced frame and added deadbolts to the front and back. I also stopped living alone for a while. A buddy of mine from work stayed over a few nights a week for about a month, just so I could sleep. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about how calm Drew had been when he first came over. The way he looked around when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way he knew exactly where the camera didn't reach. And the part that really eats at me? He didn't try to break in like a desperate thief. He didn't take anything. He just tested the lock. Like it was a rehearsal. A dry run for something worse. Maybe he got spooked when I shut the door. Maybe he saw a light flicker from the TV and backed off. Or maybe he was planning to come back another night, when I'd finally gotten used to the silence again. It's been a year. I've moved since then. Different town, different place. I've got motion lights, a full camera system, and I don't use Craigslist anymore. But every once in a while I'll still wake up in the middle of the night and check that back door, wherever I am. Just in case. Because no matter how many locks I install, there's always a part of me that remembers how easily someone who smiled and shook my hand in daylight came back hours later, wearing gloves and a hood, thinking he'd let himself in. It was mid-March, my junior year of high school, and I was still getting used to being home alone more often. My dad had taken a second job doing overnight security at a shipping yard, and my mom worked late at the hospital most nights. I wasn't afraid of being by myself, not really. I liked the quiet. Our house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac in a sleepy part of suburban Illinois. Nothing ever happened on our street. I'd get home from school, do homework, scroll through my phone a little too long, eat something microwaved, and call it a day. The kind of routine that makes everything blur together. That Friday night, I had just finished washing my hair. I remember because I had one of those deep conditioning masks on, the kind that makes your scalp feel cold. It was around 11 p.m. and I was the only one home. I dried off in my room with the bathroom door across the hall still shut. I always locked it when I shower, habit from years of living with nosy cousins. I'd even made a point of turning the lock before starting the water. So when I heard the distinct sound of the doorknob clicking and the soft creak of the door easing open, I stopped drying my hair mid-rub and just stared at my bedroom wall. I didn't move at first. I thought, maybe I didn't close it all the way. Maybe the steam popped it open. You know how houses make random sounds. Still wrapped in a towel, I crossed the hallway. The door was cracked open just a couple of inches. It was enough that I could see the edge of the sink and the corner of the mirror. I felt something weird in my stomach. Not fear exactly, but something cold. The kind of cold that makes you aware of your body. I pushed the door open slowly with the tips of my fingers. Nothing. Everything looked exactly how I left it. Except the little window above the toilet was open maybe 3 inches. I never opened that window. It was hard to slide and I hated bugs coming in. I remember looking at it and just standing there, water still dripping from my legs, thinking, that's odd, but not knowing what to do with that feeling. I closed the window, turned the lock on the door again and went to bed with a pit in my stomach. I didn't even tell anyone about it the next day. It felt too small to bring up, like I'd be making something out of nothing. But the following Tuesday, when I got home from school, something was off. The hallway outside the bathroom had faint streaks of dirt, muddy, narrow smears that led in a diagonal line from the bathroom door toward the back of the house. I remember staring at them, frozen in place with my backpack still on one shoulder. They weren't footprints exactly, but they had the curve of a heel, almost like someone had stepped carefully and tried not to leave a trace. Only they had. I stood there for way too long, just staring at the marks. I kept telling myself it was probably me. Maybe I stepped in something on the porch without noticing. But my shoes were by the front door, totally clean. And I hadn't used the bathroom since morning. The weirdest part? The window was open again, just slightly, like before. I remember walking in and feeling this strange pressure in my chest, like I had to keep breathing slow, or I'd lose it. I checked behind the shower curtain like it was muscle memory. Nothing there. But I swear to God, the smell in that room was different. It wasn't just shampoo and damp towels. There was this faint metallic scent, almost like pennies or old nails. I ended up texting my mom asking if she'd opened the bathroom window. She just replied, "Nope, why?" I didn't tell her the full thing. I didn't want to sound dramatic. But later that night, I couldn't stop replaying the sounds from Friday in my head. The click of the lock, the creak of the hinge, the quiet hush of the air as if someone had just stepped away. And now the dirt, the marks. My brain kept looping back to that tiny window, the one no one ever touched. I even climbed up on the toilet and looked at the outside ledge. There were faint scrapes along the paint, right where someone could rest their foot while climbing in. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the house made my muscles tense. Around 2 a.m., I swore I heard something in the hallway, but I was too afraid to open the door. I just lay there, clutching my phone under the covers, staring at the shadow of the doorknob in the moonlight. I think that's when it really hit me. I wasn't just spooking myself anymore. Someone had been in the house more than once. They didn't break anything. They didn't take anything. They didn't even make a mess. But they came inside, moved through the hallway, maybe even watched me without making a sound. The next afternoon, I came home from school and didn't even go inside right away. I just stood on the porch, staring at the house. It was quiet. Still. Too still. When I finally went in, I walked straight to the bathroom. Window. Open again. This time a little more than before. But what made me stop in my tracks was the floor mat. It was turned around. Not just crooked, flipped like someone had stepped on it, picked it up to check something underneath and laid it back down without caring about the position. That was the moment something snapped in me. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't drafty hinges or warped wood. Someone was using that window to come into my house. I called my dad that night. I didn't care if he was working or tired. I needed someone to believe me. I told him everything, from the first night after my shower to the dirt in the hallway to the flipped mat. To his credit, he didn't say I was imagining things. He told me to stay in my room, lock the door, and he'd be home within the hour. I sat there with my desk chair jammed under the doorknob, baseball bat on my lap, heart thudding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Every creak of the house made me jump. I kept picturing someone crouched under the bathroom window, just waiting for another quiet moment to slip back in. When my dad got home, he did a sweep of the whole house. Every room, every closet, the backyard, nothing. But when he checked the outside of the bathroom window, he found something I hadn't noticed. The ground beneath the window was flattened, like someone had stood there multiple times. There were shoe prints, muddy, half-faded but real. Not from work boots or running shoes, but something lighter, almost like worn sneakers. And next to the window frame, scratch marks, tiny horizontal lines etched into the wood, like someone had used a pocket knife or something sharp to pry it open from the outside. That same night, my dad screwed the window shut from the inside and installed a motion sensor light above it. He also put a wooden rod along the bottom of the sliding glass door in the kitchen, just in case. After that, we started locking every single window, even the ones no one ever used. My mom made a few calls and had someone install a small security camera facing the side of the house. Nothing showed up for weeks. No more open windows. No more muddy prints. No strange smells. Whatever or whoever had been coming in must have realized it wasn't going to be that easy anymore. They stopped or moved on. I still don't know which is worse. It's been over a year now, and nothing else has happened. But I still can't shower at night without checking the lock 3 or 4 times. I still jump when I hear creaking in the hallway, even if it's just the cat. I don't know who it was, or what they wanted, or how long they'd been coming in before I even noticed. Maybe they were just testing it out. Maybe I caught it early. But every time I think about how close my room is to that bathroom and how thin the wall is between them, I get this tight feeling in my chest. Like there's a version of that night where I didn't hear the door creak open, and I don't even want to imagine how that version ends.